Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're digging into a really fascinating question, one that gets right to the heart of who we are. How do regional cultures actually get made? We often talk about our culture like it's this ancient, unchanging thing. But what if it's really more like a river, constantly being fed by new streams? The real story, you'll see, is way less about some pure, ancient myth and much more about the mix.
Just think about it for a second. When you say you're from a certain region, say Tamil or Oriya or Bengali, what pops into your head? It's probably the language, the food, the art, right? We assume these traditions have been around forever, just as they are now. But here's the twist. What if these cultures we see as so distinct are actually the product of centuries of mixing, borrowing, and blending ideas from all over the place?
So here's our game plan for unpacking this. We're going to start with the absolute building blocks of identity: language and faith. Then we'll look at how things like heroic stories and even dance get shaped by money and power. We'll follow the migration of artists through the gorgeous world of miniature painting. And finally, we'll put all the pieces together and do a deep dive into the incredible cultural mix that is Bengal.
All right, let's jump right in. If you want to understand how a culture gets built, you've got to look at its foundations. And two of the most powerful foundations you can find are the language people speak and the faith they follow.
So let's start with language. Way back in the Chera Kingdom, which is now modern-day Kerala, they had this amazing literary style called Manipravalam. You see, as local rulers started using their own language, Malayalam, in official records, they didn't just throw out the high-status language of Sanskrit. Nope. Instead, they wove them together. Sanskrit, which they called the diamonds, and Malayalam, the corals. It's this beautiful, perfect example of cultural fusion that's literally baked right into the language itself.
And this blending of the local with the, more prestigious wasn't just happening in language, it was happening in religion too. A fantastic example is the cult of Jagannatha in Puri. The deity actually started out as a local wooden god that was worshipped by tribal communities. But as powerful kings got interested, this local god slowly got identified with Vishnu, a major deity across India. Then a 12th century king built this huge temple for him, and boom, the transformation was complete. A local deity had become a massive symbol of both religious faith and political power.
And that right there is the crucial part. The temple became a source of incredible power. If you, as an outside ruler, could control this sacred place that so perfectly blended local belief with wider tradition, you could make your rule seem legitimate to the people. This wasn't just a spiritual hub, it was a political tool. So it's really no surprise that a whole series of conquerors, the Mughals, the Marathas, and even the English East India Company, all wanted to get their hands on it.
So we've seen how language and faith can be shaped and molded by power. But this process doesn't stop there. Culture is also about the stories we tell ourselves and the art we create. And these things too are often crafted by the powerful.
In places like Rajasthan, rulers went out of their way to build up this powerful ideal of the hero. And these weren't just bedtime stories. We're talking dramatic epics of loyalty, love, and insane bravery, all preserved in poems and songs. Specially trained minstrels would perform these tales in the royal courts, keeping the memory of these heroes alive and setting a powerful example for everybody else to follow.
But we really have to ask, where did women fit into all of this? Well, a lot of the time, their roles were tragically limited. They were either the reason for the fight, a prize to be won or protected, or they were expected to follow their heroic husbands into death. This was the practice of sati, where a widow would burn herself on her husband's funeral pyre. It's just a stark reminder of how deeply patriarchal these heroic ideals really were.
The journey of the dance form Kathak is a perfect window into this whole process. It started with storytellers in North Indian temples. Then the Bhakti movement, this wave of devotional Hinduism, came along, and Kathak absorbed all these passionate legends of Radha and Krishna. Later, under Mughal patronage, it moved into the royal courts, where it picked up its complex footwork and signature style. From there, it flourished under rulers like Wajid Ali Shah of Awadh, cementing its status as a major art form, before, finally, being recognized as a classical dance after independence. You see, every stage added a new layer, a new influence.
And just like dance, painting tells a story of how culture travels. The tradition of miniature painting shows us crystal clear how the movement of people can spark entirely new and vibrant styles of art.
Miniature paintings are, exactly what they sound like: tiny, unbelievably detailed works of art. The great Mughal emperors were huge patrons of this art form. They had whole workshops of skilled painters illustrating manuscripts. And these weren't just pretty pictures. They were historical records, showing everything from quiet court scenes to huge battles. And they were super exclusive, meant only for the eyes of the emperor and his inner circle.
But what happens when that central power, that main source of patronage, collapses? Well, the artists have to find new jobs. As the Mughal Empire started to decline, these highly trained painters fanned out across the subcontinent. They found new patrons in the new regional courts popping up in the Deccan and Rajasthan. And when the Persian ruler Nadir Shah sacked Delhi in 1739, it caused another wave of artists to flee, this time into the Himalayan foothills. And there, the mix of their slick Mughal technique with local tastes gave birth to totally new styles, like the beautiful Romantic Congress school of painting. Political chaos directly led to artistic innovation.
Okay, so let's bring all these different threads together with our final deep dive, Bengal. This region is just a perfect case study for how language, religion, and even architecture are all products of a long, long history of mixing and matching.
Just take the Bengali language itself. It's so tempting to think it's as ancient as the land, but that's just not true. For centuries, the languages spoken there had nothing to do with Sanskrit. But slowly, through trade and then political takeovers by different dynasties, Sanskrit's influence grew and grew. The language we'd recognize as Bengali today really only started to take its modern shape around the 15th century. And it's a true linguistic cocktail, with words from Sanskrit, local tribal languages, Persian, and even European languages, all thrown into the mix.
You see the same pattern of blending in Bengal's religious world. As new communities moved in and settled down, they were looking for stability, for leaders they could trust. And they often found them in figures they called peers. Now, what's amazing is how flexible this Persian term became. A peer wasn't just a Sufi holy man. The title was also given to heroic soldiers, to Hindu and Buddhist deities, and even to animist spirits. It was this fluid, super inclusive idea that helped bring a diverse and growing population together.
You can literally see this synthesis carved in stone. When there was a boom in temple building in Bengal, the architects didn't just copy styles from other parts of India, they looked around their own backyards for inspiration. At the double-roofed and four-roof thatched huts you'd see in any village. This humble, local design gave birth to a completely unique temple style, including the famous Bangla Dome. It's a beautiful physical reminder of local traditions being lifted up into grand architecture.
And check this out. Here's a fantastic little detail that just captures this idea perfectly. So as a rule, Brahmanas were generally not allowed to eat non-vegetarian food. But in Bengal, a land full of rivers and fish, it was just too popular to ignore. So what happened? The Brahmanical authorities actually bent the rule. A 13th century text from Bengal specifically allowed local Brahmanas to eat fish, which just goes to show how even strict cultural rules can adapt to local realities.
So what's the big takeaway from all of this? Regional culture is not some pure, static monument that's been untouched for 1,000 years. It's a flowing river, constantly being fed by new streams of influence. It's a dynamic hybrid, created through migration, trade, war, and money. What we call our authentic culture today is really just a snapshot of a process that's been going on forever and is still happening right now. And that leads us to one last really important question. In the past, the ingredients for cultural change were things like empires, trade routes, and migrating artists. So what are the ingredients today? Is it the internet, social media, global travel, the Netflix shows we all binge watch? The process of cultural mixing never, ever stops. The only question is, what kind of culture are we making right now?